Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Daily Debate. My name is Ahmed and tonight we're going to focus on the efforts of Egypt according to the directives of His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi and Foreign Minister Dr. Badr Abdulati, the efforts of the Foreign Minister to be de-escalating the situation in the Middle East and the phone calls that took place for today. For example, between Foreign Minister Badr Abdulati and his counterpart from Pakistan, Mohammed Ishaq Dar, to be discussing the possibility of the success of the negotiations between Iran and the United States. Unfortunately, the two delegations have departed Pakistan without a solution, but with an offer from the American side to Iran. On the other hand, we have seen another phone call between Foreign Minister Badr Abdulati and the U.S. Special Representative of the Special Envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff. Later in the day, we'll be discussing all those efforts and all those developments and updates that took place on Sunday throughout the episode for the Daily Debate for tonight. However, we will be starting with the main top stories and the focus on the presidential activities of His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, as well as the Egyptian Copts celebrating Easter. As President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi extended his sincere congratulations to the Copts on the occasion of Easter, praying to God to bring it back upon Egypt and the Arab nations with more goodness and stability. President al-Sisi stressed that Egypt will remain a model of national unity and brotherly coexistence and a strong supporter of security and stability for the Arab countries. President al-Sisi wished all the Egyptians and peace-loving nations a year filled with goodness, peace and safety. On the occasion of the Orthodox Easter, President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi sent a cable of greetings to Pope Tawadros II of Alexandria and the Patriarch of the Holy Apostolic See of St. Mark, who headed the Easter Mass at the Abbasiyya St. Mark Cathedral. Earlier, in separate greeting cables conveyed by the Egyptian embassies and consulates, the head of state greeted the Egyptian Copts abroad. President al-Sisi expressed the sincere greetings and best wishes, praying to Allah to return it with blessings and goodness. First Lady Intisar al-Sisi greeted the Egyptian Copts on Easter. On her social media account, she extended the well wishes for the Copts on the occasion. She also expressed wishes for Egypt to always enjoy unity and compassion. Meanwhile, Pope Tawadros, for his part, thanked President al-Sisi for the Easter greetings, saying the Church prays for peace to prevail in the strife regions. He added that the prayers extend to the whole Middle East and to Egypt. In a phone call with the European Union Special Envoy for the Horn of Africa, Annette Weber, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Badr Abdulati, discussed the developments in the Horn of Africa region. The call reviewed the preparations for the Berlin Ministerial Conference on Sudan, scheduled to be held on April the 15th. Abdulati stressed the need to preserve Sudan's unity and territorial integrity, support its national institutions, and reject the establishment of any parallel entities. He also called for the humanitarian truce leading to a ceasefire and condemned the violations against the civilians. Both sides confirmed the importance of intensifying coordination and cooperation to achieve stability, security and development in the Horn of Africa. The Minister of Foreign Affairs also confirmed the commitment to supporting Somalia and continuing the capacity building efforts to promote stability and security by addressing terrorism and the challenges of extremism. And we will be heading for the first report of the Daily Debate for tonight, focusing on the Egyptian efforts on the diplomatic levels to be having a ceasefire in Lebanon as well. We'll be having more details in the upcoming reports, so stay tuned.
Intensive talks with regional and global partners, Cairo is pushing to transform a temporary truce into lasting stability. Egypt has exerted and continues to exert relentless diplomatic efforts to halt escalation of the US-Israeli-Iranian war, positioning itself as a central pillar of regional stability and consistent advocate for diplomacy over confrontation. Regarding Lebanon, Egypt intensified its coordination with Washington and Paris to secure an immediate cessation of Israeli strikes amid a sharp military escalation in Lebanon. Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation Badr Abdelati ramped up discussions with Western counterparts to discuss regional developments. In telephone consultations with U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff and French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot, Abdelati called for swift intervention to de-escalate the situation and an immediate ceasefire. The initiative marks a significant diplomatic push by Cairo as violence in Lebanon reaches critical levels. Expanding on these talks, Abdelati warned of the destabilizing consequences of ongoing military operations. The Israeli aggression against Lebanon undermines all regional and international efforts aimed at establishing the desired truce, emphasizing that ending the attacks remains the absolute priority. The foreign minister reaffirmed his country's commitment to Lebanese sovereignty and territorial integrity, cautioning against the risks of the conflict expanding into a full-scale regional war. This diplomatic mobilization follows direct coordination with Lebanese authorities. Last week, Abdelati spoke with the Prime Minister Nawaf Salam to express Cairo's categorical condemnation of the Israeli strikes and to reaffirm Egypt's unwavering support. Talks also focused on the necessity of bolstering Lebanese state institutions and addressing the deteriorating humanitarian situation. Cairo's intensified efforts come as the human toll rises sharply. According to the Lebanese Ministry of Health, strikes conducted on Wednesday, April 8th, resulted in more than 200 deaths and 1,000 injuries within a 24-hour window. The current climate has placed mounting pressure on international actors to synchronize mediation efforts. Paris and Washington are seen as pivotal links in these negotiations, while Egypt seeks to consolidate its role as a regional mediator. Cairo continues to stress the need for diplomatic convergence to restore a durable truce and prevent further instability across the Middle East. Egypt's role in this context has appeared as a key factor not only because of its regional weight but also due to its accumulated diplomatic experience in managing complex crises and its ability to bring together distant parties through balanced and pragmatic acts.
Welcome back. You're still watching the Daily Debate, and to be shedding more light on the latest developments in the region, I'm honored to be having with me over the phone Dr. Ahmed Sharaf, the academic consultant and the political analyst. Thank you very much for being with us tonight, Dr. Ahmed.
Thank you for having me. Always my pleasure to be with you.
Anytime. The pleasure is all mine. First of all, how do you see the current two-week ceasefire between Iran, the United States and Israel, especially in light of the latest round of negotiations that took place in Islamabad, in Pakistan, which, as we did see in the past hours, did not yield a permanent ceasefire. The negotiations were not ongoing, and they have left both delegations, the Iranian delegation and the American delegation, they have left Pakistan without reaching an agreement, but with an offer on the table.
Well, Ahmed, the situation today and nowadays is defined by a delicate and uncertain calm. A fragile ceasefire between Washington and Tehran has introduced temporary pause in hostilities, yet beneath this apparent staleness lies a complex web of strategic calculations. ceasefires in protracted conflicts are rarely mutual. Both sides today, after finishing the first round of negotiation, we can just see that amid such a volatile landscape, we can just see the Egyptian role emerging once again as a key diplomatic actor working to contain tensions and to promote dialogue. And through sustained outreach and engagement with multiple actors, we can just see that there are many actors like Cairo, like Islamabad, seeking to reinforce the escalation pathway and maintain channels of communication. Today, the regional tension probably is trying to overspread, but there are some attempts also in order to contain such situations. Diplomacy probably can play an important role, and we need to consider also the efforts of different actors of how to contain the current situation. As you can just see, the current news talking about that there would be something like naval blockading for the situation. So I think that the present moment in the Middle East today requires to reconsider the situation. We can just see that the situation today is shaped by multi-front pressure dynamics. The Strait of Hormuz remains a critical variable. While it's currently stable, its strategic importance as a global energy corridor means that it could be reintroduced as leverage if negotiations stall. The regional actors, particularly Egypt, are playing a significant role in sustaining diplomatic space through active engagement and escalation efforts. And finally, the coming days, Ahmed, are very decisive. The region is positioned between two trajectories: a gradual diplomatic opening or a return to calibrated escalation. Ahmed?
Yes, Dr. Ahmed, as you mentioned, the efforts of Egypt and more specifically Foreign Minister Dr. Badr Abdulati to be conducting phone calls for today after the latest conclusion that we have seen following the negotiations that took place between the American and the Iranian delegations in Islamabad in Pakistan. The phone calls included Foreign Minister Badr Abdulati speaking to the Foreign Minister of Pakistan, Ishaq Dar, and the American Special Envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff. How do you see the Egyptian handling of the current situation in the Middle East nowadays, diplomatically?
Well, as you know, Ahmed, that one of the critical and the key feature of Egyptian diplomacy is its focus on de-escalation through crisis management. Rather than pursuing high-profile breakthroughs, Egypt put its priorities to contain conflict and preventing its expansion. So this approach is particularly visible in its handling of sensitive files, such as we remember in the past, like the Gaza file, where Egyptian mediation has consistently played a central role in maintaining ceasefires and facilitating humanitarian coordination. So equally important today, we can just see that Egypt's ability to maintain balanced foreign policy posture by avoiding rigid alignment with competing blocs. Egypt is trying to enhance its credibility as a mediator and preserve its ability to engage with diverse actors. So Egyptian diplomacy in the current moment can be described as a quiet but consequential. It doesn't seek to dominate the headlines, but rather to shape the conditions under which dialogue remains possible in the region defined by uncertainty. Ahmed, this steady and disciplined approach plays a crucial role in preventing tensions from escalating into wider conflict. Ahmed?
Yes, Dr. Ahmed, what are the conditions, as you mentioned, from both sides that could be derailing the negotiations?
Well, as you know, Ahmed, that is each one probably is trying to dominate the situation. So from the U.S., they considering, for example, security guarantees and strategic containment. For Iran, they are talking about the sovereignty, sanctions, relief, and the strategic recognition. From Washington perspective, the primary condition remains centered on security and containment. At the same time, the U.S. seeks something like the commitments. Any agreements must include mechanisms that ensure compliance, reflecting broader concern with credibility. Beyond formal terms, Washington also operates under domestic and international pressures. On the other hand, Tehran considers that the core conditions revolve around sovereignty and economic relief. The lifting or easing of sanctions is not merely a negotiating point, but a fundamental requirement tied to internal stability and economic recovery. Equally important is the demand for the recognition of its regional role. As you know, that Iran seeks to negotiate from a position of legitimacy rather than pressure, resisting arrangements that appear to limit its influence without corresponding guarantees. I can just say that beyond the declared position, both sides operate under very implicit conditions that complicate the negotiation process, and that includes the need to avoid appearing weak, the preservation of strategic deterrence, the use of different regional files as leverage in negotiations. So let me just summarize that the current negotiations are less about finding common ground and more about managing boundaries. Each side enters the process with clearly defined limits, some stated, others unspoken. The success of the ceasefire will depend not only on aligning interests, but on whether both parties are willing to adjust these conditions in meaningful ways. And without such a flexibility, the current pause risks remaining a temporary arrangement rather than a foundation for lasting stability. Ahmed?
Yes, Dr. Ahmed, focusing on the Egyptian role, not just on the diplomatic front, but also on the presidential level and the activities of His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi to be de-escalating the situation in the region, in the Middle East, as well as sending messages of support to our brothers and the Arab leaders in the GCC countries such as Saudi Arabia, Bahrain, Qatar and the United Arab Emirates. Egypt is the main pillar of stability and security in the region. How would you assess the role of Egypt for the past 40 days, during nowadays as well, in the ceasefire?
Well, as you know, right. As you know, Ahmed, at the leadership level, Egypt's engagement with GCC states is characterized by high-level consultations and continuous communication. Presidential outreach plays a central role in aligning perspectives on key regional developments, particularly those related to the United States-Iran dynamic. So we can just see that a major focus of Egypt GCC coordination is regional security, especially in light of potential escalation scenarios that includes ensuring the stability of critical maritime routes, particularly in the Gulf, monitoring developments that could affect energy markets and economic security, supporting diplomatic efforts to maintain the current ceasefire environment. Through such coordination, Egypt contributes to broader efforts to contain tensions before they expand into wider conflict. So Egypt's engagement with GCC countries reflects a careful balance between shared interests and independent positioning. While Cairo maintains strong ties with the Gulf states, it also preserves its role as a mediator by avoiding full alignment with any confrontational stance. There is also a very strong relationship between Egypt and GCC countries, by which we can just see the economic and the strategic interdependence. stability in the Gulf directly impacts Egypt's economic environment, particularly such as energy flows, investment, and trade. So the bottom line here, I would say that in the moment defined by uncertainty, this coordinated approach may prove critical in preventing escalation and supporting a more stable regional order. Ahmed?
Yes, Dr. Ahmed Abd Tawab Sharafuddin, the political analyst and the academic consultant. Thank you very much for being with us tonight on the Daily Debate. And we will be heading to the main statements announced and stated by the American Vice President J.D. Vance after the negotiations were concluded that he was leaving Pakistan without an agreement, but with the best and final offer on the table for Iran.
But the simple fact is that we need to see an affirmative commitment that they will not seek a nuclear weapon, and they will not seek the tools that would enable them to quickly achieve a nuclear weapon. That is the core goal of the President of the United States, and that's what we've tried to achieve through these negotiations. Again, their nuclear program, such as it is, the enrichment facilities that they had before, they've been destroyed. But the simple question is, do we see a fundamental commitment of will for the Iranians not to develop a nuclear weapon,